Welcome to this section on the emergence of two powers. In the Cold War course, let us learn how the two power blocs have emerged. There are 8 subtopics here which you can see. The two superpowers, the promise, first division, how did it happen, the Soviet camp, the Nato, the Warsaw Pact, the alliance system, and the non-aligned movement. Let us learn each one in detail. Let us see first the two superpowers. The two superpowers, that is the US and the USSR, wanted to expand their spheres of influence in different parts of the world. Hence, they decided to take help of the smaller countries. Now, what are the two superpowers? As it is mentioned here, the United States, you can see the flag of United States partially here, and the USSR, the Soviet flag. These two superpowers wanted to grow their influence, to expand their spheres of influence in different parts of the world. Hence, they decided to take help of the smaller states to make them join into their groups so that they can expand their sphere of influence. That's how these two countries started to grow their influence. Now, how did they grow their influence? They attracted the smaller states by giving them a promise of protection. They promised that they will protect them. They will give them weapons and economic aid against their local rivals, mostly the regional neighbors. Why did the smaller states join in this race, or why did they get aligned to either of the superpowers? That is, either the USA or the USSR. One, the two superpowers want to expand their spheres of influence. The smaller states were attracted towards this because they got a promise from the United States. They will be protected from their enemies. They will be given weapons, economic assistance to fight against their local rivals, who are mostly the regional neighbors. That's why the smaller states decided to take help from the superpowers. The first division took place in Europe. Most countries of Europe sided with the United States and thus came to be known as the Western Alliance. So the first division took place in Europe, that is, most of the countries in the Europe decided to get aligned or took the side of US. So thus it came to be known as Western Allies. As towards the Europe's point of view, if you look at the location of Europe, towards the western side we have the location of Atlantic Ocean, then the North American continent, as most of the European nations decided to take the side of United States, where it's a democratic setup, a capitalist bloc ideology. This comes towards the western side of the direction when it comes from Europe. So they are also known as Western Alliance. Now moving to the Soviet camp, the countries on the Eastern Europe joined the Soviet camp and they came to be known as Eastern Alliance. As I told you, from Europe, the western side you get the North America, towards the eastern side you get the Asian continent. Like this, we have the first division coming, known as Western Alliance, the second one known as Soviet camp, it came towards the Eastern Alliance. Now we have the camps formed. Now let us see the NATO. How did the organization of NATO come into existence? The Western Alliance formed itself into an organization known as NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It came into existence in April 1949 with 12 states. NATO declared that armed attack on any of them, that is any of the 12 states in Europe or in North America, would be regarded as an attack on all of them. So the Western Alliance were the European nations who sided towards the ideology of United States, formed an organization known as, it came into existence in April 1949 with 12 member states, and they all declared that any one member is being attacked either from Europe or in North America would be regarded as an attack on all of them, and each one would help to defend each other. This is the official symbol of NATO. That's how NATO came into existence. Once NATO has come into existence, as we know, there is another organization which is going to come to counter this one, that is the Warsaw Pact. Now the Eastern Alliance came to be known as Warsaw Pact. Now it was led by Soviet Union, and this was established in 1955. Its principal function was to counter the NATO forces in Europe. They want to counter the NATO forces in Europe. This organization or this pact is signed with the prime motto to counter the NATO setup. You can see the official Warsaw Pact. Now the alliance system, the East and Southeast Asia, now US want to grow its influence towards the eastern side, especially Asian continent, in order to counter the growth of Soviet Union. In the East and Southeast Asia and in West Asia, the United States built an alliance system called Southeast Asian Treaty Organization and the Central Treaty Organization known as CENTO and Seattle. Now in response to these moves made by the United States, by making the Asian countries as allies, to these moves by the United States, the Soviet Union and the Communist China developed close ties with the countries in the region, including the North Vietnam, North Korea and Iraq. In this way, the superpowers started to establish their alliance system in Asia as well. Now moving on to the factors that led to the development of non-aligned movement. Many newly independent countries were now worried of losing their freedom. Cracks and splits within the alliances were quick to appear. So the many newly independent countries post World War II were literally worried, if we join any group, what will be our condition? If we join towards the US bloc, definitely you are going to attract some amount of negativity from the other bloc and the other bloc members. And the cracks and splits started to appear from late 1950s. The Communist China quarreled with Union Soviet Socialist Republic, that is the Soviet bloc, towards the late 1950s. The other important development was the non-aligned movement. The smaller countries were of more help to the superpowers because they were the means to gain the vital resources such as oil and minerals, locations to spy each other and launch weapons. So, many newly independent countries decided to stay away from the two superpower blocs, or the blocs which are led by the superpowers. Now, the superpowers also need the smaller countries in order to gain the vital resources such as oil and minerals, and also use their locations to spy on each other and to launch weapons. This led to the foundation of Non-Aligned Movement. The founding members of the Non-Aligned Movement are Ghana, Yugoslavia, India, Indonesia, and Egypt. Jawaharlal Nehru was one of the founding member of Non-Aligned Movement. We'll discuss further about the Non-Aligned Movement in the next module. So, in this module, we covered what are the different factors that led to emerge two power blocs in the entire world. What are the two power blocs? What made the smaller powers or the other member nations to join the two superpowers? What was the first division that happened? Then what was the counter division? How did Nato come into existence? What was the counter pact that was signed, that is Warsaw Pact? How did the alliance system spread beyond Europe and reach to Asia? And how did the newly independent smaller states, after suffering for a long period of colonial rule or colonial exploitation, decided not to join any of the power blocs and remain separate from this power bloc politics? Stay tuned. We'll catch you in the next section.